So after posting our video on Lesser Celandine, I think we defined the problem. Most people were in general agreement that this is a problem to have such a carpet of invasive, non-native weed that's choking out the native vegetation. What there wasn't a lot of agreement on was what to do about it. Some people like the idea of herbicide, some people like the idea of doing some sort of mechanical pulling, some people are throwing up their hands and saying, it's already gotten past us, there's nothing we can do. We're trying to find an answer to that, and as I look online and I look for options, I don't see a lot of information on ways people have treated it, what's worked, what hasn't worked. So what we've done here is we've set up a whole series of test plots. We're going to try some of the things that we've heard about as far as ways to treat it. We're going to try different herbicides at different concentrations so we can figure out the minimum concentration that works. We're going to try some mechanical means, mowing and black plastic and clear plastic and some things like that. We're going to try some environmentally friendly chemicals like trying to treat it with plain vinegar. We'll go through all of that and talk about it. Some of the things will work, some of the things won't work. The idea is to learn, and then you can learn, and other people won't make the same mistakes. Thomas Edison said, "I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work." So we're going to find some ways that hopefully find some ways that work. But if we find some ways that don't work, that's okay too, because one person finding it out means that everybody doesn't have to make that same mistake following after. I should mention that when we chose what we were going to use for testing here, we did not choose weeding. I know some people talk about weeding and they weed in their yard and such. When I read people's experience online with weeding, the only time I hear people successfully weeding is when they weed it out and then sieve the soil and remove any roots and tubers and things like that from the soil. I don't think that most people are willing to go through that much effort. It's certainly not very practical in a situation like a woodland where you've got other roots and things that you're fighting. A pasture area that's covered with Lesser Celandine. If it works for you, if you've got a few patches of it in your garden and you can weed it out, great. I'm just trying to find a solution that would work in a broader area. I would love for you to watch this whole video about all the work that we put in, all the subtleties of what worked and what didn't work, but I recognize that that's not practical for everybody, so I'm going to give a brief executive summary of what we've learned through a year's worth of testing here. Most important thing, things that kill off surface growth but don't kill the roots, things like mowing and burning and vinegar, don't do anything to get rid of the Lesser Celandine. If you want to get rid of Lesser Celandine, you have to get rid of the roots. And the way to get rid of the roots is through an herbicide. What our plots have shown right now is that glyphosate works really well. Triclopyr has definite possibilities. We need to look into it more because we need to find a good concentration. But that's the executive summary. If you have Lesser Celandine, treating it with a chemical is really the way to go. And I get the idea that some people say, "Oh, I don't want to pollute the ground with chemicals." Recognize that you're going to have a trade-off. You're either going to pollute the ground with this non-native invasive that's going to choke everything out, or that's going to keep seeding and spreading and spreading and spreading, or you're going to pollute the ground in a very confined area with a chemical that's going to degrade over time. It's only going to impact exactly what it touches, the vegetation that it touches, and then the rest of the season things are going to be growing up. To me, it's an easy trade-off. The glyphosate has much, much less environmental impact than allowing the non-native to take over. So with that all said and that rant out of the way, let me go into more detail about what we found through all of our testing. So we've defined our test plots. All of our test plots are 1.5 feet wide by about 4 feet long. 1.5 feet because that's the width of the plastic that we have that we're going to be trying out. It makes it easy for us to measure things. We have a 1 foot square. We're going to set our 1 foot square in the corner of each test plot, take a picture of it so we can see where we started, and then we'll take another picture after we've completed it and after the growing season, and then probably early next spring, we'll see how things have worked both immediately and how they worked 1 year in advance. Okay, so our first control plot is the first plot is a control plot. We're not going to do anything there. The next one is vinegar, 5% acetic acid, just a household vinegar. We're not sure whether it's going to be strong enough or not. The next one is going to be another bubble wrap. Then we've got a glyphosate selection here. This is ShoreKlear Plus, which is mixed with a surfactant that is aquatic safe. It doesn't hurt aquatic animals like regular Roundup does. So ShoreKlear, we've got 3 different concentrations. We've got 4%, 3%, and 1.5%. As we move along, we've got a clear plastic. The idea of clear plastic is that it will concentrate sunlight. Although this is a shaded area, I don't have high hopes for that. But if it warms up the soil enough, it could kill off those tubers and could kill off the plants. We've got 2 of them. One will take off when the plant has died back in a month or so. The other one will leave on here until next spring and see if that makes a difference. Then we've got black plastic. A lot of people like to use the black plastic. It's debatable whether or not black plastic is going to be hotter or whether the clear plastic is going to be hotter. But it definitely cuts out the sunlight. So we'll do the same thing. We'll have the black plastic on for 2 lengths of time to see whether we can take it off after the plants die back, or if we should leave it on until next spring. Then we've got 2 mowed plots. We've mowed off all of the leaves. One of them we will continue to mow, and one we will probably let grow back and see how it makes a difference if you can just do 1 mowing or if you need to do multiple mowings. We have a bubble wrap, which is clearer but insulates somewhat, so that should concentrate some of those sun's rays and maybe kill off the plants that are underneath it. Over on this side, we have 3 concentrations of a Triclopyr. This is Alligare Triclopyr 4 mixed up in an aqueous, so it's a water situation. There is a surfactant in that, and then I've put a colorant in both the Triclopyr and in the ShoreKlear. So we've got 12%, we've got 6%, and we've got 3%, 3 different concentrations of the Triclopyr. We've got another mowing plot that will try some different things on mowing and how that works. And then we have another control plot where we won't do anything to see how that looks without doing anything. So it's April 6th, 2021. It's the day after we did most of our test plots. We're adding 3 new test plots for other things that we wanted to try. We had tried standard household vinegar at 5% acetic acid, and from online it seems like that doesn't work very well. So we bought a 30% acetic acid. We're going to try it in 2 different concentrations. We're going to do 1 test plot with 30% and 1 test plot with 15%. We also are trying some chelated iron. There were some environmentally friendly herbicides that worked on the idea that if you give them an abundance of iron, that will kill at least some broadleaf herbs. So we were trying that. So it's a 1.5% iron solution, chelated iron. So I'm realizing as I'm mixing this up that one of my concerns with using vinegar, while it's supposedly environmentally friendly, was what does it do to the pH of the soil? Theoretically, you would expect it to lower the pH. I've read someplace where acetic acid breaks down and somehow it doesn't do anything long-term to the pH of the soil. When I look on this bottle here, one of the things that it says that it's used for is lowering the pH of soil and water. So if I had this to do over again, I would probably take the pH before we did the testing, and then take the pH immediately after, and then take the pH a while afterwards and see what we're doing to the pH of the soil. I should talk a little bit about timing, because this is later than I would like to have done this. I would rather do this when it's just leaves and the flowers haven't come out. But this is the time that people think about it. This is the time that people notice it. They don't really notice it when the leaves are out. So I kind of would like something that would work once you're at this stage. In an ideal situation, it would be better to do it earlier on. Particularly with the herbicides. I don't like the idea of applying herbicides to the flowers where then they may be taken up by bees and other pollinators that come by. But this is what we're working with right now. We'll try something else later. So it's April 10th. It's been 6 days since we've treated most of these, 5 for some. We'll talk about it, and I wanted to see how things are going at this point. I wanted to show you, so I didn't know which subspecies of Lesser Celandine this was, but this is the subspecies that produces these bulblets that are starting to form. So the flowers are basically going to be sterile in these, assuming this is all the same species or some subspecies. The flowers are going to be sterile, so we don't need to worry about seeds here. We need to worry about those tubers that are underground, and we need to worry about these bulblets that form down around the first leaf or so, because those will drift off and resprout into new plants. So come on down here and we'll look at what our treatments have done. You can see that a lot of the Lesser Celandine is starting to lose its flowers. It's getting on. So this is the vinegar treatments, 15% and the 30% vinegar, and you can see that most of the above ground portion has been killed off. Pretty impressive. I mean, if you're looking for noticeable kill, the vinegar has done a great job. If you come over to the other side, I'll let you go here. You see our control patch, what it looks like, and then right next to that is just household vinegar, so that's 5% vinegar. And then the next 4 plots are all glyphosate concentrations, various glyphosate concentrations, starting with 4%, another 4%, a 3%, and a 1.5%. Not a lot of signs of anything. You can kind of see some yellowing, but that doesn't surprise me. I wouldn't expect this to show up for another week or so. The clear plastic looks pretty healthy underneath. I'm not sure that the clear plastic is doing anything. And again, not too surprising, because if you look up, you can see that we're in kind of a shaded area. No leaves on the trees, but this is a shaded area. So the clear plastic would work in a sunny area where the sun is getting in and concentrating its rays, and it would be heating up the soil. So the next 2 plots are black plastic. The black plastic, it still looks pretty healthy, but you can start seeing some yellowing in there. Then we have 2 that we've mowed down. Really not a lot of regrowth. I don't see anything regrowing at this point. You can see some places where we missed the Lesser Celandine, but not a lot of regrowth after a week. And we've got this bubble wrap, which again looks pretty healthy. Then the one next to it, this is the iron solution. So a chelated iron, 1.5%. Interesting thing. It appears that the outer parts of the leaves are turning black and dying. So we'll see what happens on that. I'm very curious to see how that works with the grass that's in there too. And then there's areas that we didn't treat. And if we move along, here we have 3 plots of the Triclopyr. We've got 12%, 6%, and 3%. The 12% looks like everything is dying. There's grass is dying, the celandine is dying, the 6% looks like it's being knocked back, but it doesn't look as bad, and the 3% is looking pretty healthy, actually. Then we've got a plot where we mowed it down, and then I went over with the torch and torched the ground. And I don't see much of anything growing in there. We'll see what comes up from there. And then we've got another control plot at the end. We're going to run through a series of pictures that were taken on April 25th of 2021. So this is 20 days after we started treatment. So you'll see kind of what the effect of the treatment is, but not necessarily what the long-term effect is. So we're going to start off with a control. So you can see in the control picture that along the bottom, there's still plenty of Lesser Celandine in leaf. The flowers are gone. but the plant is still there and there's other things growing up. So that's what the control looks like. Then our first, we'll go through the vinegars. Each set of vinegar, 5% acetic acid is what we'll start with. You can see where it burned off the top growth. Top growth is basically gone. I think there's one little Lesser Celandine plant growing up through that, but mostly where we treated, the Lesser Celandine is completely gone with the vinegar. At least the top part of it is. 15%, same thing. 30% also, it's completely burned off. There's other vegetation that's starting to grow up, but the Lesser Celandine is completely gone from those test plots. The area that we burned, and all we did was we burned it. We took it with the torch and just burned it off. Still pretty much bare ground. Again, we burned off the top of the Lesser Celandine. Lesser Celandine naturally dies back, so it doesn't, if we kill off the top, it doesn't re-sprout at this point. It just says, okay, we're dormant, we're going to be, all our nutrients are going to be sitting in the roots for next year. So then we have the glyphosate, 4 different glyphosate concentrations. 4% glyphosate. The last set, the glyphosate didn't look like it had done much. Here we're 20 days later, so the glyphosate has killed off pretty much everything that it came in contact with. So 4% glyphosate, pretty much barren. 3% glyphosate, a little bit of stuff showing. 1.5% glyphosate, you can actually see some green of some Lesser Celandine that hasn't been killed yet, at any rate. Whether it's going to be killed later on, we'll see. The clear plastic, I think this is the Lesser Celandine thinks that this is just like living in a greenhouse because it is flourishing along with everything else under the clear plastic. Got a couple clear plastics. Black plastic, we did 2 again. Again, it doesn't look very healthy because you can see that the chlorophyll can't get light in there, so the chlorophyll is starting to break down. The plants still look fairly healthy though under the black plastic here at 20 days. What we mowed has started to fill in. Things have resprouted. Again, I don't see any Lesser Celandine that's resprouted, but I wouldn't expect that because once it's cut down, it's just going to go dormant for the year. It doesn't mean it's necessarily gone, just means that it's not here for right now. The bubble wrap is kind of like the plastic, the clear plastic. It basically just made a little greenhouse for it to live in. Chelated iron. It looks like the Lesser Celandine was knocked back. I can still see some leaves in there. It doesn't look like it killed it off completely. The instructions for other chelated iron treatments talked about retreating after 20 days or so. So we did not do that, so we'll see what happens later on. The Triclopyr. So the 3 Triclopyrs, the 12%, the 6% and the 3% Triclopyr, looked like it killed off everything. Again, I think that we way overly strong on the Triclopyr. Triclopyr probably should be more in the range of 0.3%, 0.1% rather than 12%. So it looks like it has cleared off everything. I would like to think that Triclopyr is going to kill off these broadleaf weeds and leave the grasses. You can see in the 12% and in the 6%, and it's not until the 3% that we actually have any growth showing up, and it looks like the 3% is not sufficient to kill off the Lesser Celandine. I think that we'll see in the long run that it probably will, but we'll have to wait until the end of the test for that. The mowed and burned area still looks pretty bare. And then again, no treatment at all. You can see how there's plenty of Lesser Celandine here that should be in these plots if we hadn't treated. June 7th, we're checking in on our plots for treating Lesser Celandine. At this point, we're late enough in the season that all of the Lesser Celandine just naturally has died back. I look around and there was a big plot here that was covered with Lesser Celandine that there is no indication that it was around. So obviously all of our test plots are going to not have Lesser Celandine, but we want to see what the impact of our treatments were on the other things that were around. So let's go check that out. So we have 3 plots over here. We have a plot that we burned. We have a plot that is 15% acetic acid. We have a plot here that's 30% acetic acid. no discernible difference between any of them. Again, no Lesser Celandine, and the vegetation that you would expect to see here in the summer has come up in full force. Over here we have a control plot. Again, a wide variety of things growing here. Then we have a 5% vinegar. Okay, so this is just straight household vinegar in this plot here. Again, a lot of vegetation. Then we've got a series of glyphosates. So this is 4% glyphosate, and actually this is 4% glyphosate, another 4% glyphosate, a 3%, and a 1.5% glyphosate. It's hard to tell. There's not a lot of difference between them, other than the fact that there's the type of vegetation that's growing there. But there's a solid cover through it all. Okay, then we've got 2 treatments using clear plastic. Interesting to see, the clear plastic, the plants are still growing pretty well. It looks pretty much like the glyphosate one next to it. That's clear plastic. The idea of clear plastic being that the sun would heat it up and could kill things, but we're in a shady situation here. Now the black plastic, obviously sunlight can't get down to it, so that's pretty much bare ground. A little bit of creeping Charlie sliding underneath there. Okay, another black plastic. So these are 2 where we mowed them down to the ground. We mowed off everything that was there. We wanted to see what would happen if we just mowed off the plant. This one I'm pretty sure was the chelated iron treatment. Again, not much difference between all of them until you get over here. Then we have 3 plots of Triclopyr. 12%, 6%, and 3% Triclopyr. And there is nothing living in here. It is completely dead. Then we have another mowed area. This we mowed, and then we went over it with a torch and burned the soil. You could see a lot of stuff still lived through that. And then another control plot. Today we get to see the final results of this whole project. And this is the results that I've been most interested in, because it's the results of what happens a year later after we've treated this area. You know, have we actually gotten rid of the Lesser Celandine? So I'm looking forward to seeing what the test plots look like. So I'm just going to go through this in order that we have them laid out here. We started off with vinegar. We started off with 15% vinegar and 30% vinegar. If you look at this, and it's a little deceptive right now because, as you can see, we've got ducks in the area, and it looks like the ducks have managed to eat all the flowers off of the Lesser Celandine. So I will say that this sample plot, though, is full of Lesser Celandine. It is pretty dense. Both of them look evenly dense. I wouldn't say that the vinegar, either the 15 or 30%, did anything to knock back the Lesser Celandine. You can see it on the other side of the fence. It looks like it's about at the same level there. If you go across the hallway here, actually this is our control. We probably should have started with that, but we're going in order. So this is the control. You can see just what these plots would look like if they weren't treated at all. This is pretty dense Lesser Celandine. Again, we don't have any flowers. It's a little later in the season. It is April 1st right now, so you can see what a control looks like. Now, I have to say that we had a little mishap with a vehicle, and so we've got a big tire tread running through our sample plots here, but I think we can see on either side of it what's actually happening. So this is what it's going to look like. Our next plot over here, this is 5% vinegar, 5% acetic acid, and you know, the 15 and the 30 did not do much. You can see that there is no difference between the control and the 5% vinegar, it didn't do anything long term. Although last year, when we first put this out, it was very impressive how quickly the vinegar burned off the above ground portions of the plant. Very impressive. Didn't do anything long term though. Our next plots, we have the glyphosate, the 4, the 4, the 3, and the 1.5. And again, unfortunately, we're missing a big swath out of the middle of it. But I look through this area and I do not see any Lesser Celandine in any of these plots, including over here. In the 1.5, I see a couple plants coming up in the 1.5% glyphosate. So maybe that's a little bit. Maybe that's just, you know, this is something we missed, or maybe it's a little too weak. But it looks pretty good. I definitely feel right now what we use 4%, just because when we treat something, we want to make sure that it's done. We're only going to treat it once, and I want to make sure that it's gone. Maybe we could go down to 1.5%. It's still a little. We'll have to try some bigger test areas and see. I don't know what that looked like for the rest of this area. So that's glyphosate. I feel pretty good about that. Particularly feel good, you know, after the last set that we looked at, and how much the ground and the vegetation recovered after being treated. It's pretty impressive that things grow in this ground without any problem. The only thing that was killed was plants that the glyphosate came in contact with. So this is the clear plastic. We did not remove the clear plastic on one of these like we talked about doing. We just left it for both of them, so both of them are the same, and you can see that it is fresh and clean and everything looks amazingly healthy here. So the clear plastic did absolutely nothing for us. The black plastic, on the other hand, as you would expect, it looks pretty beat up. So this has been in place for a year. You can see that things have started to come up. We've got some young Lesser Celandine coming up that's getting starting to die. So I don't think we could have kept this off in the spring. I think it would have looked much like those other plots that it would have filled in. It is not killed at this point. Maybe if you left this on here for another season, it might kill it off. Maybe with black plastic, maybe you could put it on for those months that Lesser Celandine is actively growing, because it's only actively growing in the spring and then it dies back. Maybe you could pull off the plastic during that growing season, let other things grow up, and then put it back on in the February or so when it would normally start to come back to the surface and kill it off. That's a possibility. Our next plot here. These are 2 plots that we did mowing. We mowed them to the ground, basically scalped the ground completely. And as you can see, there's still plenty of Lesser Celandine growing through here. So even mowing scalping it all the way to the ground did not seem to do very much. Regular mowing, you can imagine, would not do much. You can see that just in people's lawns. You see where they've mowed it, and the Lesser Celandine handles that haircut without any problem. The bubble wrap, which is not in very good shape right now, but is basically the same as the clear plastic. It is a nice, healthy, the healthiest stuff we find is under the clear plastic. Not very useful. This is the chelated, 1.5% chelated iron, which looked like it was going to kill off some things. We were hoping that it was going to work as a broadleaf killer and then maybe leave the grass growing. There is still grass in here, but the Lesser Celandine looks just as dense as the control plots. I would say that the iron did not do anything in this situation. And this actually is not treated at all. So this is a control. You can see the 2 plots next to each other. No discernible difference between the 2. Over here, again, chemical treatment, we have the Triclopyr plots with 12%, 6%, and 3%. These have been pretty devastated. Again, we used a percentage that was much stronger than we should have. It should have been in the 0.1, 0.3 or so range, and instead we were up 10 times as much as that. Triclopyr is a broadleaf killer, so we were expecting that the broadleaf plants would die and that the grass would still live through it. In a sense, we basically nuked everything. We're going to do some more testing with Triclopyr to see about what concentration you need that would keep the grass and still kill off the Lesser Celandine. That's for another video. But right now, all the Lesser Celandine is gone. You know, that's a good thing. We look through this area and there's, you know, things that are growing up, it's recovering, and there's no Lesser Celandine in any of these three plots, including the including the 3%, because the dividing line would be right about here. So there's 0 Lesser Celandine in the whole area. Now this area, the next one over, is an area that we mowed and then we burned it with a torch. And it, up here, oddly enough, up here there's not that much going on, but you get past here and there's lots of Lesser Celandine all growing down through there and some plants here. It does not look like it was very effective. Mowing it, even scalping off to the ground, is a lot like using the vinegar. It cuts off the above ground portion, but lets the roots just go to town. So that was really useful to me at any rate. I learned a number of things. I learned things that didn't work. For me, things that kill off the top, like the vinegar and the mowing, but don't affect the roots. That's not a useful thing to me unless we go through and we kill off the top and then kill off the top and kill off the top, and we stretch this out over many years. If that works out for your management, that's fine. To me, I'm more comfortable with the glyphosate. 1.5%, 3%, probably the 3% glyphosate is a good solution for me. I'm comfortable using the herbicides because I know, and I think that the test plots here have shown that the glyphosate does not sterilize the soil. It only kills off things that the glyphosate has come in contact with. So I'm comfortable with that. And that does bring up a really important point here as far as when to treat this. We said at the beginning of this that I don't really like treating it once the flowers have formed here. I would much rather treat this in February. You have the advantage with Lesser Celandine is that it comes up early in the spring, basically before all of the spring wildflowers come up. You can treat it with a glyphosate when that's the only thing that's up. I would treat it, you may not get everything because some stuff would come up later, but you'd get a lot of it, and then that would kick it back, and then you could spot treat rather than broadcast treat areas. So what tools do we have in our belt now? What are our answers for this? I would say, to summarize this, the very first thing is try to keep this off your property at all costs, if it's at all possible. If you do have a few spots of it, hit it hard early on. Don't give it a few years and think, oh, it's too much, I'm going to worry about it later. It's going to get horrendous and it's going to be too hard to do. Make sure that you don't bring it in from another source. Make sure that if you're weeding on somebody's property that has Lesser Celandine and you bring your trowel and your shoes, that you wash off those things so that you don't transfer these things into your own garden area. If you're driving through an area that there is Lesser Celandine, it will get caught up in the mud on your tires, and then you will spread it all along the paths. And I see this in nature centers all over the place. Where do you see Lesser Celandine? You see it right along the trails, and you can imagine that's from people's shoes. That's from gators or mules or whatever it is, the all-terrain vehicles that people are driving around, and they're just spreading this stuff all over the place. Use good hygiene when driving around. We were just at a nature center. A new nature center hasn't even opened yet. They just built a parking pad in this nature center. There's no Lesser Celandine in the area except for one patch next to this new parking area. I have to figure that it came in on the machinery that they used to excavate this parking area. If you're in charge of having earthwork done, make sure that whoever brings equipment onto your site cleans up their equipment so that they're not bringing non-native invasives onto your site. So I thought that was very useful. Hopefully that was useful to you. Please leave comments, what you think works, what doesn't work, what you've tried. If you have other resources of things that we should consider, I am all for learning more about what we need to do, because Lesser Celandine is a serious problem. We really need to work together to find a solution. So thanks for watching.